All right, scholars, welcome to week 4 of virtual learning. Let's get rocking. This week we are working on, drum roll please, multiplication and division. So we spent 1 week reviewing multiplication. We spent another week reviewing division. This week we're going to be kind of combining the two skills. I noticed on our quiz last week we were getting a little bit tricked on those like sort of opposite questions where we were asked to maybe show what multiplication fact we could use to solve division and vice versa. So we're going to review that this week. Let's crack these math codes. As a reminder, my friends, gonna have to move this guy up. This sign we associate with, I gotta get my pointer out. What do we associate this sign with? Multiplication. If you got that right, kiss your brain. And what does a good math detective, a good mathematician associate or assign this sign? Yep, they know that that means they're gonna have to be doing some division. Move my video. All right, so let's keep cracking. We know that this sign, this multiplication sign, a good mathematician, actually reads that as groups of, and we know that we're going to be combining equal groups. We know that this multiplication sign here means groups of, and we combine equal groups. The division sign, how does a mathematician read that? Say it with me, ready? Splitting. Yep, if they read that as split into or splitting. So we know that they read this sign as split into, and we know that we are equally sharing or splitting into equal groups. Both of those mean the same thing, just different ways to think about it. All right, some multiplication reminders. We know when a number is added over and over and over and over again, the result is a product. Is a. Yeah, it's a product. We know that when we multiply two numbers together, we get a product. Specifically, the numbers we multiply together, those are called factors. So if we look at a multiplication equation, we see that if this is 3 groups of 4 or 3 times 4, we know that these are our factors. 3 and 4 are our factors. And what they equal all together, if I combine 3 groups of 4, I get a product of 12. Now let's look at this for division. We know that division is when a number is split into equal groups, and the result is called a quotient here. So after the equal sign is a quotient. And that is what we call the answer to a division equation. You might notice, though, that if I look at the equation from the previous slide, my product here was 12. So my total here is 12. What I've done is I've used the same factors and put it into division so we can look at the connection here. So if 3 groups of 4 equals 12, if I have 12 things, that's my total number of things, and I'm splitting it into 3 groups, I get a quotient of 4. Basically what happens is the factor, when in the multiplication equation, the 4 was a factor, 3 times 4 equals 12, the factor transformed into our quotient here. So our quotient tells us how many go in each group when we split 12 into 3 groups. The quotient is one of the factors from your multiplication equation that just transformed and got a special name because now it's actually the answer to our division equation. Say, so cool. Yeah, I thought so too. So we know that there's lots of strategies we can use to solve multiplication and division problems. We can draw a picture. We can make an array. We can even skip count, move my video. Today, we're going to be super focused on arrays. Arrays are a super useful tool to help practice writing our multiplication and division equations. Let's review quick and fast how we use them to solve a division equation.
Hello, today we're going to be doing a division problem where I'm going to show you the array strategy. So what I have here is I have the division problem 18 divided by 3 equals, we don't know. So what we're going to do is, for an array, we're going to split up 18 into 3 equal rows. And I have 18 blocks here. I'm going to make my 3 rows. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pretend that I'm playing with a deck of cards with my friends. And I'm going to pass them out one at a time between the 3 rows, like they're 3 people, and until they're all gone. So 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you. And I keep going until they're gone. Notice that when I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep my rows nice and neatly organized. and I keep them stacked on top of each other, nice neat columns. This makes it a lot easier to be able to tell if you're getting the right answer and make sure that they're all even and equal. Okay, so now that I built this, I can see that each person would get 6 cards if these were a deck of cards. So to draw this, what I would do is I would draw 3 rows. There's my 3 rows. And I'm going to draw circles this time. And I'm going to count to 18, and when I get to 18, then I'm going to stop. And again, I'm going to do the kind of same.
I want to pause it real quick and draw your attention to the strategy that she's using. We haven't drawn arrays like this before, but I found this video and thought this was such a cool way to draw an array. So really pay attention to how she does it. It'll help you make sure that you're not adding too many rows or columns.
Same idea where I'm passing them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Again, I have them nice, neat rows. The columns are nicely even, so I can easily see that they're all equal. Each row has 6, therefore each person would get 6, and my quotient is 6.
I'm going to pause it right there because I want to make this a little bit more spicy. So she currently has the division equation, right? She has 18 things. She used 18 cubes in this case. She was splitting them into 3 groups. That's why she has 3 rows. I'm going to go ahead and label that on her array. So she has 3 rows here. Now, I know an array, like she mentions, they have rows and columns. We can think about these as the dimensions, the dimensions of the array. So she told me that there were 6 in each row, which means if I were to draw lines down each of these, really hard to do without drawing through them, but I'm trying my best right now. I see that I have 6 columns. So I know that if I were to write this like in a multiplication equation, I would write 3. Oh, you can't quite see that very well. Let me do it in another color. I could write the 3 rows times the 6 columns, or 3 groups of 6, equals 18. So basically, what we're going to practice doing today is looking at arrays like this and writing both division and multiplication equations to help us realize fact families can be used to solve. For example, the fact right here, 3 times 6, or I know I can also think about this as, I'll do it in another color, 6 times 3. Because I know that because of congruency, if I were to take this array and rotate it and just rotate it the other way, I would have 6 rows with 3 columns. So because of our congruent rule, we know that 3 times 6 equals 18, but also so does 6 times 3. So I know that's always, 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 always going to equal a product of 18. So that means anytime I see a division equation like I do here that starts with 18, I can be thinking about this fact family. So if I see that I have a total of 18 things and I'm splitting them into 3 groups, a really quick way for me to solve this is to think about, okay, so if I have 3, what other factor do I know I can multiply by 3 to help me get to 18? By practicing and becoming more familiar with the dimensions or the rows and columns or the factors, they have so many different names, that equal a certain amount of a certain total in our array, we'll be able to solve division equations much quicker. So that's what we're going to practice today. Let's get into it. Ooh, it is time to reveal our magic words, so get ready, please. The word for today is array. Since we're using it so often, I thought it might be a good idea to make it our word for today. So it is array. We know that those are when we have rows and columns of objects to help us find a product. We know that today we are also going to be using them to practice finding quotients and with division, because we can be using our knowledge of how many totals are in here to figure out what the quotient or how many are in each group. So it is array. That is your word of the day. So Our first question today says, draw a rectangular array of 24 tiles. What are the dimensions of the array? So there's lots of different configurations or ways we can draw an array with 24 tiles. For the sake of today, I don't want you drawing something with one row and one column. On your independent practice, it will remind you that. So I want you to be drawing something that has more than one row or more than one column. For the sake of today, I want you to follow along with me. I know that I could draw more than one, but I would like to draw something that is a little bit chunkier. If you prefer not to draw, and maybe you have something like, I happen to have foam tiles with me. If you don't have foam tiles, no big deal. You can use things around your house that you have, just like little objects. But if you're someone who needs to make the array in order for it to make sense to you, I want you to actually go ahead and pause the video. Maybe you can grab some things like if you have a bunch of paper clips around a bunch of buttons. I used to use little like dried beans because we happen to have a lot of those around my house. But if you're somebody who needs to make the array before you draw it, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to pause the video, and you can totally go ahead and do that. So if you're somebody who needs to make the array, so say I want to do, let's do columns of 4 or rows of 4 and see if that works. So that means I'm going to add 1 in each of my rows until I get to 24. So I know this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My array is trying to get away from me over here. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, make sure they're nice and push in there, 21, 22, 23, 24. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move it so you can see the full array. Oh, it's moving away. Go over here. All right, so I have my 24 tiles. I know because I can do 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So if I'm using rows of 4, the dimensions of my array would be the rows by the columns, the rows by the columns, get your hands up. I saw some of you not get your hands up. The rows by the columns. So the dimensions in this case would be 4. I can do it with my magic pen. The dimensions in this case, there are 4 rows and there are 6 columns. 4 rows by 6 columns. So I know the dimensions in that case that I can type in here. For question 1, I'm just going to scoot my array off to the side so I can make a note of this. For question 1, I know that for 24 tiles, I can say 24 tiles equals, we know that there's 4 rows by 6 columns. If you're someone who prefers to draw it, let's draw it really quick. You can do the same thing just like I did or just like the woman in the video did. So you would draw something like this, draw a rectangle, draw your 4 rows, and then just put 1 in each until you get to 24. So be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You can also mark your counting. Good mathematician would probably do something like this. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So in this case, I know that a 4 by 6, even though there's a little bit of overhang, I'm just going to ignore it. Just draw a hard thing like that. I know a 4 by 6 will give me 24. Now, it's really cool that we actually wrote it like this because let's look at our second question here. After we type in the fact that 4 times 6 equals 24, it tells us to write a multiplication equation to match this array. Well, I know when I write the dimensions to something, I'm already even using the groups of symbol, which I know is multiplication, because I'm thinking to myself, all right, when I made my array, which kind of got a little goofed up, when I made my array, bringing it back here, I had those 4 rows and the 6 columns. So I know that 4 groups of 6 equals 24. which I know is just 4 times 6 equals 24. So let's write that multiplication equation to match the array. Some of you might be tempted to type in the fact that 6 times 4, maybe you're using your congruency knowledge, that 6 times 4 equals 24. However, that doesn't quite match the array that we made because our array had 4 rows and 6 columns. If you're going to tell me that 6 times 4 equals 24, that means your array would have been the congruent version. We know is basically, so this is a 4 by 6. We have 4 rows and 6 columns. If you want to write 6 times 4, then you would have drawn or made something that looks like this. It's the congruent, which means we flip the rows and columns. In this case, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Now we know it has the same total tiles because we're really smart mathematicians and we reviewed this when we did array jar. So we know that it doesn't matter 4 times 6 or 6 times 4. Either one of those will equal 24. 4 groups of 6 or 6 groups of 4. Because in this case, this is 6 groups of 4. I have 1 group here, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups, 5 groups, 6 groups. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can say 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles in each row. However, we made and we drew this array. So for the sake of today, really making sure that we're matching that. So just making sure that we know our congruency factors and we can use them to help us solve, but we're not getting tripped up here. So this is the multiplication equation that we wrote for question 2. Now here's where it gets fun and here's the whole purpose of this week. We can also write a division equation. In fact, we can write 2 division equations, even though I just hold up 4 fingers, 2 division equations to help us also model the same array. Let's think about how we can also represent a division equation. We know that division is about splitting into equal groups. Get your hands up and do it with me. We know division is about splitting a number into equal groups. So this is the same amount of tiles that we had before. So we know there's 24 tiles in here. So since that's our total, I'm actually going to write that first. So I know 24 split into, and let's use the same factors. In this case, I want to split 24 into 4 equal groups. So I'm going to say 24 split into 4 equal groups equals, and then we can show you using our array how to solve this. We know that we could draw our array, but I do like to show it with the tiles just to show a little quick here. So we have 4. Now all I'm going to do is make sure there's an equal amount in each row. With some magic powers, I will fast forward through time. So I have my array. We have 4 rows, and then let's count how many are in each column. So I know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what this is saying is 24 split into 4 rows. So say this was my row. Then maybe I'm splitting these tiles with my sister. She gets this row. Then maybe I'm splitting these tiles with my mom, and then my mom gets that row, and then my dad gets the last row. So I have my 4 equal groups, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in each group. So that means I know when I push my array back together, I can use it to solve the fact that 24 split into groups of 4 means 6 in each group. Now, I can also use this same array to solve another division equation that talks to me about a total of 24. I could also write there's a total of 24 tiles. But now I want to split them into groups of my columns. I want to split them into groups of 6. So 24 split into 6 groups equals, and I can use this same fact knowledge and this same array to help me solve. If you're somebody who's really good at the multiplication strategy, who already flipped this into a multiplication equation and found the missing factor, kiss your brain, but I want to point it out for my friends who are more visual learners. So in this case, I'm splitting my 24 tiles into 6 groups. So I'm going to say 1 group for me, 1 group for Buffy, maybe 1 group for my sister, 1 group, I'm going to move these over. Then my sister's dog gets a group. Then my mom can have this one. And then my dad's group kind of just got kicked off of the paper there a little bit. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups with 1, 2, 3, 4 in each of them. So the number sentence that would match, or the division equation that would match this situation would be 24 tiles split into 6 groups, into my 6 columns, means there are 4 in each group. So we can be using arrays to help us create division and multiplication equations and to solve both of them. So we also know too that anytime we see 6 groups of 4 or 4 groups of 6, we always know there's going to be a total of 24. So if you're seeing a division equation, combine my array back together, that was kind of cool. So if you're seeing a division equation that starts with the total of 24 and then has one of these factors in the groups section, so 24 split into 4 groups is this one. Or 24 split into 6 groups, you can use the fact that you know 4 times 6 equals 24, or 6 times 4 equals 24 to help solve. Because you know 24 split into 4 groups, well, that's just 6 per group. But if I wanted to take that total, because that's just splitting these by their rows, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and we know there's 6 in each. But if I do 24 split into 6 group, that's just splitting the array by its columns, which I know equals 4 in each group, because that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with 1, 2, 3, 4 in each group. Super cool how we're using arrays to solve these types of questions. Let's rock and roll on our last question together for today. So now let's see how we can transfer this over to what the question was actually asking. If I can get this to work with me here. So it says to select the 2 correct equations below. Now I know the 2 equations that we wrote over here were 24 split into 4 groups equals 6 and 24 split into 6 groups equals 4. So I'm going to find those answer choices. I found them right here and right here. I'm also going to look at my other answer choices and decide why those don't make sense. I know that 4 divided by 6, if I take 4 things, if I take these 4 things, just these 4 things, and I try to split them into 6 groups, that's not going to equal 24 things in each group, right? Here's my 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if I just split them into 4 groups, I've already run out of things. I would have to split these into lots of pieces. So I'm not going to get 24 in each group. I'm going to cross it out because it's a silly one. Now say I have 6 things and I want to try to split them into 4 groups evenly. So that means I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my first 4 groups. 1, 2. I've already run out. I would have to break these apart, but I for certain know that there's not going to be 2 things in each group because I already see that by using my 6 tiles to represent this, I've already run out. There can't be 2 in each group. This group gets 2, this group gets 2, but these groups are left with just 1. So I know that doesn't make sense either. That is not true. All right, let's rock and roll on our last question together. Select all the equations that match this array. So for what I'm going to do for this one is I'm not even going to scroll down to look at my answer choices quite yet. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write all the equations I think can match this. I'm always going to start by writing my dimensions first. So I'm looking here. I'm going to count my rows and I'll mark those in green. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Now let's see how many columns I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 columns. So now I know my dimensions then. This is a 6 by 8 array. I'll write it over here. My handwriting will be much neater. So this is a 6 by 8. Time to solve this. So the way I can solve this is I can count by 6s or count by 8s. I prefer to count by 6s because I'm a little bit better at counting by 6s. I'm going to mark my skip counting below. You can also redraw this array and mark your skip counting, but that might waste a little bit of time. Even if you're counting on the array, you can still mark it like I'm marking it right now. For example, I could go 1, 2, I know that there's 6 in here because I just counted it. So I would go 6. Here, I'll move my mouse so you can see where it's doing it. So I would go 6. Now I know this next one is going to be a total of 12 because I know 6 plus 6 equals 12. Then maybe I'm going 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now maybe I'm going 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So even though I'm counting on the array, I can still be marking my work on my scratch paper like I'm skip counting. This will help me practice my skip counting. Now I'm not going to count the next 6 because I know 24 plus 6 equals 30. But I'm going to move my cursor or my thing over 1, so I know I'm not going to double count that column. Now I know that my next group is going to be 36 because 30 plus 6 is 36. Now I'm going to use the array again to help me count. 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. And I know I'm going to end on 48 because 42 plus 6 equals 48. So I know that I have a total of 48. There are 48 tiles in here. So 6 times 8 equals 48. Now I know I can use this to also be writing my division equations. I'm going to zoom in just so we can focus on the work for this problem. I have a total of 48 tiles. When I do my division, I know I start with the total. Or I can think about it like it's the opposite of multiplication, so I'm going to start at the end. So I have a total of 48 in my array. Split into, and I'm going to do my rows first. So split into, well, how many are my rows? 6. I have 6 rows. So 48 split into 6 groups. I'm just going to write a note that this is my rows. 48 split into my 6 rows equals how many in each row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8, exactly. Or in this case, the number in my columns. I also know that I can think about this as split into my columns instead of my rows. So I can go 48 split into my, well, what number, how many columns do I have? If I were to take these apart in this picture, just like I was moving them apart when I had my own tiles, I know that this would be one group, this would be another group. I can even color it if we would like. Let's do red for this. I know that if I was counting my columns, this would be one group, this would be another group, this would be another group, and so on and so forth. Kind of looks like a hot dog. 48 split into my 8 total columns, right? I'm not changing any numbers. There's still 8 columns in that array. Equals, and then how many are in each column? If you're thinking, Miss Cupp, it's the number of rows there are, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's always going to be 6 in each column because there are 6 rows in our array. Equals 6, so the number in our rows. I know that these are the 3 equations that definitely match this array. Let's see if the answer choices are there. I'm going to go ahead and clear my writing. All right. 48 split into 6 groups equals 8. Does that match one of our answer choices? Or does that match one of the things we did? Yeah, we did that right here. This was one of the first one we did. If we took our 48 total tiles in our array, split them into groups by their row. So if I took this row, went and gave it to, like, maybe my mom gets this row, my dad gets this row, Buffy gets this row, I get this row, my sister gets this row, then maybe her dog Mac gets this row, right? They're each going to get 8 things. So that is a correct answer choice. 6 times 8, 6 groups of 8 equals 48. We know this is also a correct answer choice because these are our dimensions, right? We wrote that right here. But we also know 6 rows of 8 columns equals that 48 tiles. All right, let's look at the next answer choice. 6 plus 8 equals 14. That's true. If I have 6 things and I add another 8 things, I'll have 14 total things. But that has nothing to do with this array. They were just trying to see if they could trick you by putting the factors and adding the factors, but you guys are VCP scholars, I know that wouldn't happen to you. Let's look at our last answer choice. If I have 48 total things, split them into 8 groups, will I get 6 in each group? Does that array prove this? Yeah, it absolutely does, because again, I have my total of 48 things. If I split them into my 8 rows, so maybe in this case, I'm now splitting it between my mom, my dad, my sister, Mac, Buffy, myself, Then maybe my grandma gets some, and then maybe my grandpa gets some, right? Now I have 8 people who are getting each column, and they each get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. So yes, 48 split into 8 groups is a total of 6. So each of us would get 6 tiles. Alrighty, my friends. So you know that your last question is always your word of the day. If you forgot today's magic word or the word of the day, go back in the video and see if you can remember. I hope you would remember because I had all the pictures and all the fun effects. But after you type in today's magic word, make sure that you are remembering to use your array strategy to help you practice writing multiplication and division equations. Tomorrow, we're going to see how we can be using this strategy to help us find unknown factors, which means maybe we have the total and we have one of the factors, but we don't have that missing one because that seemed to trip us up on our quiz. I will see you tomorrow.